it's a complicated question, right? What does it mean to be an Alaskan author? Does it mean you have to live here? Does it mean you've used a honey bucket? Some people don't know what a honey bucket is, and then you can't be an Alaskan author if you don't have that answer. To be an Alaskan author, you have to be somebody who Alaska really touched, and you've spent some time here, that you know it. You've struggled through a winter, or you've loved a winter. You've done something like carry a honey bucket, or eaten moose, or hunted moose, or slogged through Anchorage traffic. Like, I don't know that there's really a good answer to that. I guess for me, being an Alaskan author, part of it is my responsibility to the place that I love so much. That makes me an Alaskan author. That my writing could be used, and my stories and characters could be used to help protect Alaska, or to shed light on the issues that are in Alaska, or to help people who live in Alaska. I wouldn't be the writer I am without Alaska. It's where I learned how to be a storyteller. It's the community, the support from people. I think other places, when you tell somebody that you want to be a writer, or you're a kid and you think you want to be a writer, people would just maybe scoff at that. But where I grew up, everyone supported me, and they didn't doubt that I would someday. And so that was really helpful. And then I think it helps to get out there. People are interested in Alaska. They have been. They always will be. And so, being an Alaskan writer in that sense, people are interested in the stories that you have to tell. They want to know how we live, why we live here, and how we do it. And so I think that's a benefit to all of us that are writing from Alaska. But I think mostly for me, it's the community of readers, the support, and then also those other writers who have been willing to share their experiences and their stories, and lend a hand when they can. No, my favorite Alaska book. That's a really super tough question, because there's so many Alaskan books that kind of really meant a lot to me. I think probably the most important Alaskan book for me is Harold Napoleon's Yuyok, The Way of the Human Being. And that book to me is important because it helped me understand a lot about where I grew up in Southwest Alaska. It helped me understand a lot about life. And so for a book, that was really key. I think probably my favorite Alaskan book would be Seth Kantner's Ordinary Wolves. It's really, really a favorite of mine. Another favorite of mine is Chris Farman's Turn Again. I think that's a book that I wish more people knew about, so I could talk about it with them. It's a really great novel. I don't know that I don't know that any Alaskan books have really influenced my writing, because I hadn't really read that many Alaskan books before I started writing about Alaska for that very purpose. I didn't really want to be influenced. I wanted to be my own voice and write my own way. And so it hasn't been until I like really got my first novel under my belt that I really started branching out and reading other Alaskan works. And in that sense, I feel extremely limited. There's so many great Alaskan books out there that I still haven't read yet. But I'm excited about that because I have a future of great books ahead of me. And my go-to answer is Seth Kantner, because he's like a brother to me. Now, I joke, and I guess I'm not completely joking. I really hated him before I ever met him. And not really in the hate sense, because I don't hate anybody, but when in grad school everybody would compare me to Seth Kantner, and I hadn't read his work, and that was really frustrating. And so I wanted to write my first novel before I read any of his work, just for that very comparison reason. And picked up his book after I wrote my first novel and started reading it. We had the same female character name. His character's name was Iris, and so was mine, and I folded the book up and threw it across the room. And didn't read Ordinary Wolves for several years. I'm not that stupid of a person, but I really made a dumb mistake there because I missed out on that great book for a while. But since then, him and I have become really good friends. He's like a brother to me. So, but not just that, his personality and our friendship alone, it's his work ethic and his determination to get a story right, and his stories and his characters are as good as it gets. His essays, his anything he publishes in the newspaper, like everything is so spot on. I love his work. Um, Chris Foreman's another author that I really admire for his tenacity. He just keeps going and going and going and just keeps churning out books. I really admire him. And then I could just keep going. I mean, John Straley, how could you not admire John Straley? Authors like Dana Stabenow. I mean, the Alaskan list of authors is so amazing. It's hard to like pin one down. And so I just pick on Seth because we're really kind of two tundra white boys. And so we have a bond there, I guess. The best thing about being a writer in Alaska, I think it has to do with the community. It has to do with the communities that we come from, the support that we get from people who are excited to hear our work, to share our work, and to kind of commiserate with other Alaskan authors and celebrate our successes and our triumphs. I think in other communities, I talk to a lot of writers from around the States, and they're always jealous of what we have here in terms of community, and that fascinates me to have, like somebody, a writer who's living in LA or something and thinking they're in like the hot spot of writing, but they're lonely, inherently lonely. And here we have a little bit of a community. We can just, I just went to lunch with an author, and we got to talk about writing stuff, and I think that sort of community that we have is essential. And that to me is what makes being a writer here the best. I think that I'm supported. I have support from my peers. I have support from kind of mentors at all levels. There's just all levels of people in Alaska that are willing to work with you. We don't have that competition that happens in other communities. I think we celebrate each other's successes, and like if I have an Alaskan friend or some Alaskan author I don't even know having a book coming out, I'm excited for them because it's another person from our community that's kind of coming forward with the story. So it's all about community, I think, for me. I think the hardest part of it is the proximity to the publishing world, right? I think for me that's the hardest part. I have no way of being in contact with the editors and those the people that kind of make that happen, and so I think sometimes that can be kind of frustrating. You have an agent or somebody who's doing all that for you, but there's just no chance really that you'll ever even meet the people that you're working with down there. Everything's, if there wasn't for email, I wouldn't even have a book. It wouldn't even have happened. And so I think that proximity is a little frustrating at times, and especially for doing any sort of promotions or anything like that outside of Alaska. But I guess I don't know why you would want to go out of Alaska to do that book stuff anyway, but I'm joking. It's kind of frustrating. That part of it is. I think the other part of being an Alaskan writer that might be frustrating is at times, and that's also maybe part of the challenge and why we do it, is explaining Alaska to people who don't know. That's a lot of the work we have to do as writers. And so at times that can be frustrating. I don't want to have to explain something. I just want to write about it and let people get it, and if it's something that they're not going to understand, then I have to tie that into the story somewhere in a way that they'll get it. And so at times that can be frustrating because I just want you to know what a honey bucket is and be disgusted at it and not laugh at it. I always go back to the honey bucket because that's my standard joke, but it's really not funny. And I want people to know that. I guess I'd be in trouble if I didn't say my friend's work because now once you have a book published, then other people approach you. So I end up reading a lot of manuscripts, and so at times that feels like work, but a lot of times it ends up being pleasure. And so a lot of new manuscripts I see, I think that's just part of how the publishing food chain works. You read other people's work, and so that's part of it. I think my new favorite author to read is Luis Urrea. He wrote The Hummingbird's Daughter. He's one of my favorite authors, new favorite authors, I guess. Cormac McCarthy's is kind of a standard that I go to, and Yeah, what else do I read for pleasure? Novels, I guess. Novels and poetry. And the occasional nonfiction. A little bit of everything. Screenplays. You got me. I read.